Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Pat McCutcheon, the CEO of Power Leaves. Pat previously founded MediPharm Labs, which became one of the first profitable cannabis companies in the public markets. MediPharm got to nearly $1 billion market cap and raised just under $200 million during those glory days when you couldn't help but even go to the store and somebody would mention a cannabis stock. In December 2020, Pat stepped down from his role as CEO of MediPharm to focus on his personal life and get involved in new passion projects. He was then sought out by a group of Colombian businessmen who thought he would be the perfect guy to help indigenous communities sell the coca leaf to the rest of the world. Power Leaves has a first of its kind exclusive 15-year agreement with local suppliers in Colombia, enabling them to legally produce decocainized extracts that can be exported around the world. Pat has focused on creating streamlined and efficient supply chains for the extraction and processing of the coca leaf, and heck, I even got invited down to see the facilities back in May. Power Leaves is in a position to do first-of-its-kind research on various uses of the coca plant. For example, they are currently researching chemical fertilizers by offering an organic alternative that boosts both plant health and yields. To be clear, Power Leaves is dealing with decocainized extract. In other words, they aren't doing anything with that illegal white stuff that would have many investors running away screaming because, well, quite frankly, that would be totally illegal. But of course, there's going to be certain investors out there that are looking to play the legalization theme, and the coca plant has been all over the headlines recently with a newly elected president who has shown interest towards new pro-legalization regulations, and publications like The Economist coming out with headlines like, "Joe Biden is too timid. It is time to legalize cocaine." In this interview, Pat downplays the scenario, but in my view, it's clear that the markets will end up assigning some sort of optionality here for investors who like the theme. This is one of those deals that I believe can catch the retail investor's eye. Guys, I love a deal where a company is a trailblazer for their space, because often if the space opens up, it's those names that are going to end up generating abnormally high returns for investors. I'm thinking names like Canopy Growth, Hive Blockchain, and Mind Medicine. Power Leaves is still private, but I thought it would be a good chance to start some dialogue on our platform with the company. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Pat, thanks so much for joining us today.
Steve, how's it going? Great to see you, buddy.
So let's start at the very top here. We got introduced because you were working on a deal that I found really fascinating. You are now working on a deal involving the coca plant out of Colombia. How did you get involved here? What's the backstory?
Yeah, it's just like everything else in my life is an interesting backstory. I'm not actually the founder of Power Leaves Corp. I was found and identified by the founder. I resigned as CEO from MediPharm Labs about 2 years ago. I resigned off the board about a year ago or so, and looking at over 1,000 pitch decks to see what I was going to do next. And I was really burning to take another CEO role, but in something totally new and exciting.
So according to a report here from the UN I got in front of me, coca production in Colombia is up 43% over the last year. We've got a new leader who is somewhat open or very vocally open to changing the laws towards the coca plant. What's changed here that has made Colombia decide that they want to back or at least be supportive of the farmers of the coca plant?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but I think the top reason is that Colombia, in essence, has been left out of this international distribution opportunity for the most incredible super plants that I've done research on after having touched many other psychoactive plants for their products. I think because of the stigma with the negative connotation of coca it's taken a long time for someone to finally put their hand up and actually support this. The new government, which is a significantly leftist focused government, is very much behind farming and reassessing cultivation for the indigenous groups that need new revenue streams and sustainable revenue streams. And coca has been used for over 7,000 years in this region. There's actually, in the region we work, there's over 240,000 hectares of coca grown, and coca is harvested up to 4 times a year. You could potentially do a ton per harvest per hectare. So you can imagine how much is actually being grown in this area, and it's being put into other illicit uses. The government really wants to move this into a legal framework and give the indigenous an opportunity to truly take part in an industry that they've been working with for over 7,000 years, as I said before.
So what's going to drive that though, right? Like we've got the illegal part that is sort of a derivative that can be made from the plant. And then we've got these other uses such as, I guess we could say what Coca-Cola has right now, where it's sort of an ingredient in a cola drink. Obviously, if the Colombian government is going to start to just, be more supportive of the coca plant farmers, what are the products going to look like, or what can it be used for that's going to drive the economics?
Yeah, the plant is incredible. It truly is the super plant of the world that just hasn't been touched. For example, it's got over 23% protein in coca. And as I said before, it's a perennial. So the plant actually lives anywhere between 75 and 100 years. So it's an incredibly productive plant. Coca-Cola is the obvious one. That's pretty much the only product we've seen internationally distributed that's taken from coca itself, which is a decocainized extract. And then outside of cocaine, which is exactly the opposite of what Power Leaves Corp is focusing on. We're very keen and really going after food and beverage market, which is a very stable market. There's a lot less regulation than some of these other pharmaceutical and nutraceutical markets. We're looking at functional energy drinks, functional water beverages, as well as a lineup of alcoholic products, tequila, gin, vodka, and a number of really cool alcohol products in Colombia, as well as, which is a really unique element of Power Leaves, and very different from anyone else that's actually touched coca, is fertilizer. So we actually take all of the waste streams from our extract that we're putting into food and beverage products for distribution locally and into the US. We're putting those waste streams into fertilizer, which is a massive world challenge right now, where we're going to be offering domestically in Colombia and across Latin America a very unique fermented coca fertilizer, which will be the first in the market. So it really moves away from the stigma of where everyone has assumed the coca plant has been used for so many years.
Pat, I've got to bring up the subject cocaine. I didn't know if I want to say the word or not because we don't want to get beat up by the algorithms, but let's just go there. The Economist came out 2 weeks ago and they wrote an article essentially saying that cocaine should be legalized. Do you see this as anything that's going to happen in the near term, that momentum swinging us in this direction? And secondarily, is there any sort of a optionality here with Power Leaves should we head in that direction?
Yeah, so thanks for asking the question, Steve. It obviously comes up all the time, and we really want to make this distinction very clear. Power Leaves Corp is a company that is not at all focused on the alkaloids creating cocaine, if we can say that. I think it's important to block this now and to deal with it head on. We, in fact, the extract is decocainized, and that is a major element of how we actually can create a legal supply chain. And so we take out the alkaloids, we extract them, and then we destroy them and put them in fertilizer. And so this is a really key element, and we want to make sure that everyone is clear that this company is not focused on a pharmaceutical product, a medical product. We're food and beverage, and we're fertilizer. I think that working with the coca plant and these indigenous groups have been working with it for over 7,000 years is important to mention this, because reducing the stigma is important, because there's a plethora of products that spin off from this plant, and it's been incredibly used for, as I said, 7,000 years, for altitude sickness, for asthma, for fatigue, for a number of different applications, where cocaine has not been the application that any indigenous group has ever used this for. Quite exactly the opposite.
So what are the types of investors who are looking at a deal like this right now? Are you bringing in the same type of investors that were in cannabis? Are there groups that are sort of looking at the like sort of pro Aboriginal space or indigenous? What are the type of investors you're chatting with?
Yeah, a lot of different investors. We've done both of our raises unbrokered. So I've led both of them. We have almost 250 shareholders now. So we've got a lot of investors. I have to admit, there's a lot of retail investors that have come from cannabis. I've got a lot of investors that have supported myself because they've done well in the past on my previous ventures. Retail investors with smaller checks that are looking at playing a smaller portion of their portfolio in new industries. I've got about anywhere between 13 to 15 institutions engaged, a number of which are looking at, yes, indigenous sustainability, new revenue opportunities to help with the infrastructure building for these very underserviced communities. We also touch a very environmentally friendly perspective where Power Leaves uses all solar panels. We take all of our water from the mountain. We use very little electricity. We use recycled shipping containers for our labs, so that are all Colombian. So very low carbon footprint, as well as we touch the fertilizer segment, working with our indigenous partners that have used this coca fertilizer for many years. And so we do have a lot of different dynamic investors. I'm just looking to close this raise now, where we've got about another 1.5 million to close to hit our 5 million target. We put a press release out probably about 8 weeks ago now. We've just closed our first tranche of this raise itself, just over $2 million. So we're expecting to close this soon. And we're expecting to add a couple institutions with larger checks that are going to be our strategic partners to give us that strength and stability in the equity team at this phase of the company's evolution.
Here we've got this company, MediPharm Labs. They kind of burst onto the scene for the retail investor. Probably had never heard of them until about 2018. First company in the Canadian cannabis company to really show any sort of profitability, at least at the time that you were there. In those quarters, obviously you remember them. But it seems like you kind of came out of nowhere. What's the story for how you started that company? What did it look like having to go raise money? And did you build this thing directly thinking that you could have a company public that quickly? Or was the idea just to try to build something cool?
No, the idea was absolutely targeted to take the company public, but absolutely with very little experience in capital markets.
But isn't that a really tall order to just sort of say, if you've never done it before, to just sort of say, hey, I'm going to take this company public. I always meet people that say that they're going to do that. And like one in like 100,000 actually pull it off. Unless they come from like an actual, Bay Street, House Street background.
Yeah, which I didn't. I came from full pharmaceutical strategy, distribution, sales. I really, well, first off, I love the cannabis plant and I love what it could do. And I knew very clearly where I wanted to go, that being pharmaceutical cannabis and international distribution. Because of that being so unique, and because we actually broke the licensing, it really paved the way to suggest this company needs to go public. I started by putting the first $30,000 out of my bank account into that company, and we started with 5 founders. I ended up mortgaging my house twice and really hit the road in Bay Street and started knocking doors. And I became, I guess, quite well known as the entrepreneur that just wouldn't give up. And it really comes down to the absolute fixation and dedication and truly, truly hard work. Never stop working and trying to attain your goal. And so I got to meet almost every layer and a lot of the classic big names in capital markets over the 7 years that I was raising capital running the company. I started off with $100,000 into the company. Then we did a $700,000 raise. Then we moved it up to a $2.5 million, and then a $20 million strategic raise with a great partner on Bay Street, Power One Capital, which was really a strategic partner that came in and gave us an opportunity actually to move to the next level.
I'm interested in the part where you take this deal to Bay Street, you go to raise money. There are, at that time, and there's still these people running around, but there were, hundreds, if not thousands of decks being put together of people who had these sort of small venture stage cannabis deals. How did you get investors to take you seriously versus all those other deals that were out there?
You know what? It really comes down to how well you can tell your story and the fact that you can prove that the jockey is going to be able to take that story and make it into a real company. And as I said before, I didn't have the experience of raising the capital, but it was truly the uniqueness in the company. The fact that I was very bold with saying that we were going to be profitable out of the gates, which we were, and driving that story so many times that it really, I think it etched itself into the investor community. And it really set off the second wave of investment opportunity in cannabis, where to start it was vertical integration and cultivation all the way to extraction. But there was a serious gap in extraction and then distribution of high quality products, and then no international distribution at that time. And so it was a great story, but it truly was the work. I think now altogether, I've done almost 4,500 pitch meetings. In that first year, I did over 2,000, and it's a lot of $20,000 checks and $50,000 checks, and it's a lot of belief and trust with originally in friends and family, and then moving up to the strategic level of investment. But I tell you, I had a lot more hair before this all began, and the stresses and the drive that it took really taught me how to be prepared for where I am today, and a second shot now as a 42, a second shot on a bigger board going to the Nasdaq with Power Leaves.
And you guys are actually looking at the Nasdaq. Why not go through the Canadian junior markets as you did previously? Why the Nasdaq?
Yeah, we've been really focused on this being a Nasdaq targeted launch. We feel that in food and beverage and fertilizer segments, that stability and of those markets that are lower risk perspectives versus cannabis and psychedelics that have worked in the past, that makes a lot of sense to go on the big board. We feel the US is going to be where the majority of our products are being distributed, and our marketing is truly focused on our social media, our videography, and the focus is on US investors. So that Nasdaq really gives our investors a great liquidity option, and it's a great growth sector big board that we feel is more appropriate for this type of international company. We feel that with the markets the way they are now, there's been a slight delay. We originally were targeting Q1 of next year to launch. We think it's more likely that we're going to be launching near the end of H1, hopefully before summer. We don't feel there's going to be a problem at all with regards to actually getting on and qualifying. We've already cleared diligence with a number of banks, and we're confident of that segment of the business. But we do feel it's very important for us to get up first as the first coca company in the industry to launch onto the Nasdaq and give our shareholders that opportunity of liquidity.
In Canada's often, I mean, obviously every deal's bespoke, but Canada's a little bit of a different market. If you're trying to raise that early capital, it's usually like you're just doing straight equity. You know, I'm going to raise it 20 cents. I'm going to raise it 25 cents, 50 cents, whatever. Whereas it often, as I understand it, gets a little bit more creative in the US, or you're going to get sort of those safe agreements. It must make it challenging early on. And then this obviously happens in the US as well, but figuring out who you want to position early in these deals so that they're not going to ultimately whack you down the road. How much thought do you put into that when you're going around to structure your second deal?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. It's a very key element. With Power Leaves, we've almost raised $10 million. We've got a lot of shareholders already. We've already brought in 240 shareholders in the company. With the markets where they are, it's been a lot more difficult this time. But we've really done a great job of strategizing and structuring, architecting our equity team, I call it. The shareholders are a very important part of all businesses, and it's really important to have the right shareholders that are going to believe in you and support you. You always have the small list or the short list of shareholders that give you trouble, and the ones that are going to just do it for liquidity, the first view of a liquidity event, of course. But the strategy in picking and choosing the mix of strategic longer hold institutions versus your retail investor that's going to give the stock movement and excitement when it comes out and comes listed is an art within itself. As I said, I've almost raised 270 million, either directly or indirectly, between private and public equity offerings. And so I've got a lot of experience here, and it's a very important piece of the game. You don't want to leave yourself holding the bag when you first launch onto the market, which puts your shareholders in a negative position if that's the case. And I think we've done a fantastic job of keeping this equity team one of the cleanest I've seen in all of the companies that I've advised on and I've been part of over the last decade almost in capital markets.
So where is most of the staff for Power Leaves going to be located then? I assume Colombia is this is a primarily a Colombian focused business that will be ran out of Colombia. Is that fair?
Yes. So all the operations, almost exclusively operations are in Colombia. Which is wonderful. We've got a lot of really high caliber leaders and support team, as well as our indigenous team, which has been fantastic to work with. We have, and obviously it keeps, from a lot of different perspectives, with taking into consideration the deflation rate and obviously the cost of doing business in Colombia is much more advantageous relative to running a business like this for extraction of different plants and then manufacturing and distribution in Canada or the US. It's very significantly cheaper. More cost effective, I should say. Our Canadian team, so Power Leaves Corp is a Canadian corporation. The Colombian SAS is held underneath the Canadian Corp. The Canadian Corp is what's going to go public on the Nasdaq. We have an all-star team of lawyers and our finance CFO and our finance team in Canada, as well as strategy and parts of marketing. Other than that, everyone else is in Colombia, and the trend will continue to increase the numbers in Colombia itself. I actually spend a lot of my time in Colombia now, probably anywhere between 60 to 70% now, and it was even higher than that when I first started, managing and trying to learn and understand the different dynamics between Colombia and Canada, and now working in this very unique industry in the indigenous territory. Which has been a great learning experience, but definitely a different one. But Colombia is a great place to work, and I actually really enjoy it.
What's the near term news kind of look like? Are you guys disclosing stuff to the public right now as news happens? What's sort of the communication strategy? Because obviously you guys aren't public right now. You don't have to disclose anything. If I'm watching this from the sidelines, what am I sort of looking to see happen?
Yeah, we've been quite bold on our short-term catalysts, and I'll go over those. So we've got three main short-term catalysts that we communicate to shareholders. We actually have done a press release on our most recent tranche closing of this current raise that we're doing now. So we have done some activity from a press release standpoint, from communication. We've done a ton of marketing, and we're not being shy about positioning ourselves as the first coca company to hit the markets. And these short-term catalysts have been communicated a number of different ways. So the first one actually is we're going to be distributing three very unique, brand new to market, never been seen before, coca-based products. I'm not going to get into too much detail on them because there's an element of secrecy for this. Those products are going to be on the shelf. We're hoping just before Christmas. So we're going to have a very significant launch before the end of this year, where we'll be able to see revenue and profitability out of the gates with our partners in Colombia on major distribution. The second major catalyst is actually getting the first coca extracts into the US. And then concurrently, we're going to actually send small volumes to our testing lab partners to Europe, one into Amsterdam, into South Africa, into Australia and Canada, all at the same time. We're sure and confident that we're going to have that done because we've already proven through our analysis that we've cleared all of the regulated products. And then third, we're going to have products on the shelf in the US in Q1. And the reason we know we can do that is because, again, we've got great partners in the science side. And we're working with a testing lab and a group that actually works very closely with the DEA that is 100% behind us. And we've shown that we've been able to take out all of the regulated products, which is now paving the way for us to actually now export these small volumes and put numbers on the board to start. So it's really exciting for shareholders to see this type of execution in 1 year, really, of since I've taken hold of the company.
Okay, so Pat, thanks so much for hopping on here. Let's keep doing this as the story continues to unfold. I think that this is one of the most interesting themes out there, and obviously we're long the name. So I'm wishing you the best of success, and let's keep doing this.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks so much. I can't wait to get you back down to Colombia again to show you all the progress. And we're really excited to start trailblazing this new industry. It's very exciting to talk about, and we're moving at an incredible pace. So thanks so much, buddy. It's great to see you again, and can't wait to do the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And if you could do me a big favor, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so we keep making more of this content for y'all.